Vav Vav and Aleph in the middle. We'll go back a little because really we're in the middle of a story. We'll start from Rav Chia bar Zanuki, Rav Shimon ben Yoetzadik, about 18 lines down. They were going to be Ma'ava the Shana in Asya. Pagabahuresh Lakish. Lakish met them along the way. Itfil Badai, and he joined them. Let me see how these Gainim, these two tzaddikim, Rav Chia bar Zanuki, Rav Shimon ben Yoetzadik, conduct themselves. He's destined to be disappointed. Chazi Elahu Gavra, the Gakarov, found as they were walking, they saw a man who was plowing, and it was during Shvius. Amalhan Kayin v'Chayrish. Look, Rish Lakish said to the two other Amoraim, look, there's a Kayin, and he's plowing. As the Gemara is going to explain, Kehanim achshudim on Shvius. The Gemara is going to explain because Kehanim think everything's mutter for them. Since they could eat truma, they could eat kachim, they think Shvius is also allowed. It's the nature of people. That's the way it is.
More reheter for themselves.
They think I'm more reheter. They think we're in a different class. We're not bound by the same rules like everyone else.
Reheter, no? This is what it sounds like. Because everything's
they just because they're kind doesn't mean they're not ignorant. Amrulai Yachal Loimer Agistan Ani V'Seicha. So these two Amoraim said back to Rish Lakish, no, it could be that they're employees of a guy. They're not really doing being Isaac and Halacha on Shvius on a Yid's property. Maybe it's a Gayish property and they're working as laborers. Found someone who was pruning in a vineyard. So again, they said, look. So Rish Lakish said to them, look, there's another one of these dastardly Kehanim who's pruning on Shvius. Amalei, no, it's not so bad. It could be he's not working in the field. He's not pruning. He's not taking out vines in order to improve the other vines, which is Asar on Shvius. Rather, he's taking these vines because he needs the vines for his olive press. So to remove vines and use them for your olive press is fine. You're just not allowed to work the fields. We know that this person knows, maybe he's going to claim that he's doing it for his Beis Abad to get the vines to use for something else. La'akal. But really, or more likely, it's la'akalkala, that he's being makulkal, he's really doing malacha and shvius. Hayamalu Beresha. Which of these two stories happened first? If it's in the order that the Gemara just said it, that first it was the case they saw someone plowing, and then they saw someone taking vines from the vineyard. If that's the case, why didn't he give the same teretz on both of them? He could say in the case of the vines also that he's working for someone else, because when he said that he was using the vines as something else, they answered him. Rish Lakish answered back, that's not such a good teretz, because maybe even though he could claim he's doing it for Beis Abad, really he's doing it because he wants to work the field, he wants to improve the vines. So why don't he give the teretz of that he's an employee for a guy? It must be that it's the other way around. That happened first, and then Rish Lakish, they answered Rish Lakish with the story that he was using it he wanted the vines for his Beis Abad, and then afterwards there was the second case of plowing, and then they came up with the better teretz that he was an employee of a guy. Maishna Kayin. So what is this that we're casting aspersions about Kehanim on Truma, on Shvius? I'm sorry. Bishum the Chashidi Shvius. Because the Chashid on Shvius, the Tanya. We have a brisa. Saw Truma shenafel ameyasoin shel Shvius. If someone has a saw of Truma, a Truma can only be eaten by a Kayin, and it fell into 100 soin of food of Shvius, of let's say of grain. He has a saw of grain of Truma, and it fell into 100 soin of Shvius. Tala. So what happens is the saw is bottle. Echad b'masayim, 1 in 100 is bottle, and he has to what he has to do, Tala, he has to take one saw out of it, because the person who's mechuyev to give the truma to a kain still has an obligation to give truma to a kain.
What happened?
a saw of truma fell into 100 sa'im of shvius.
Shvius again is
Shvius is food that you're not allowed to do business with on shvius. You're not allowed to sell it, and you're not allowed to. You have to be mavired from your house when the end of the season comes. And there's nothing left in the field. Those are the restrictions of shvius. The Gemara says, but the problem is you can't.
Fell into that.
Yeah, but now this soft truma can only be eaten by a kohen, so and you don't know where it is. So
Who eats shvius?
anyone could eat shvius, but with the restrictions we said, you can't do business with it.
You can eat it.
You could eat it.
Even the
Yeah.
owner, obviously.
The owner certainly could eat it. But the problem is you have truma in it. The owner and everyone else are not kehanim, and you have truma. They're not allowed to eat truma. So we say no, it's not a problem. It's bottle. All you have to do is take one saw out of this mixture and give it to a kohen because you still have a monetary obligation to the kohen that you have to make up for the saw of truma that you lost. But this is no longer doesn't have a din of truma because it's bottle. Pachas mikan. But if it's less than 100, so it's not bottle. Yirkavu. You have to allow it all to rot. No one's allowed to eat it. Why do you have to leave it to rot? Even if it still has truma in it, and you can't identify the truma, why can't you sell it to a kohen for the amount that truma is worth? Except for that one saw that you have to remove, and let the kohen use it. Even though everyone else is allowed to eat perish shvius, a kohen is also to eat perish shvius. Like we explained, because a kohen, they think that all shvius, everything is mutter to them. They think they can do whatever they want. They'll leave the truma the shvius in their house, even past the zman bir. They'll violate the rules of how you're supposed to deal with shvius, and therefore they're not allowed to eat it in the first place. They're worse than everyone else. Kehanim are not allowed to eat perish shvius
the whole year.
Yes.
What are you supposed to eat the whole year? I mean,
They have to do I'm trying to think what it's called. They have to eat a keto diet, only meat all year. Listen, many people have told me I should be doing that, and maybe Menachem probably doesn't agree with it. Let's see. Let's see the Rashi. It's a good question. They'll leave the shvius after the zman bir. The ma'ir b'hoater, like you said, the ma'ir heter on themselves. Mishum the ishtaru truma v'kache kache, because truma and kache kache mamut to them like a vibe. But she's not mekdushas haaretzi. Let's see. I don't know. I don't see anything, but it's a good question. I don't know what are they really eating for the year of Truma according to this, if they're not allowed to eat shvius. Anyway, Amru Truda Hudin. So the other two Amoraim, they saw that Reish Lakish was very rambunctious. Whatever they did, whatever they were trying to be Myra Heter, they're trying to not be Myra Heter, to be matzdik. They're trying to say nice things about the people that are not being over. He was being very difficult about it and saying that they're really bad guys. So they weren't really so interested in having him involved in their being ma'avar l'shana. Kimat lahasam sliku le'igra. When they reached the place to Asya where they had this job of being ma'avar l'shana, they went up to the attic. Shalfu l'darga mituse, and they pulled up the ladder behind them so that he couldn't join. Also l'kameder of Yochanan. So Reish Lakish was not done with his complaints. He went to Rabbi Yochanan. He said, these two Amoraim, they're chashal al shvius. They're very, they take it easily. They're not chazinishniks. They're probably like the Rabbanut. They're very easy on shvius. How could they be ma'avar l'shana? How do you trust them? But then he thought about it. Reish Lakish said, "Lo kashali midi." It's not really a problem. Like we said earlier, that the Chachamim asked Roy Bakr for the zmanim of when, like the different indicators of what the weather was supposed to be. we had this a couple of lot ago, that you could consult with laymen in order to determine what the weather is supposed to be and determining when to be Ma'av L'Shana. So these Rish Lakish is like damning with faint praise. He said, listen, they probably just allowed them in there to because they needed people to consult with, but they're not really depending on them because these guys are chashad on Shvius. They were being too easy on the people who are being over on Shvius. V'Rabbanan achshchuna yismaich, and the Rabbanan are just they're depending on their own cheshbainis. V'hada, meaning how to be ma'abed shana, what the proper days are. V'hada amar, but then Rish Lakish thought about it more and he said, Loi dami, hasam hader imnu, Rabbanan avru alahu shasa. He said, but in the end, it's really I can't even accept that they just used them. They made cheshbainis and they were just using them for consultation, because over there when they asked the Roy Bakar, the Rabbanan asked them, and then the Rabbanan made the cheshbon on their own. Hacha kesher rishayimu, the kesher rishayim ain't min haminyan. Over here, Lamaisa, they're part of this group, and you're not allowed to, like the famous Isser of Verbaran, that you're not allowed to be involved in any umbrella group that includes the Reform and the Conservative. That's what you're saying, Kesher Shaim, it's a group to you wouldn't be allowed to be Ma'av L'Shana. Is a very radical position in Rish Lakish. Since these people were not sufficiently vociferously opposed to people that Rish Lakish thought were being lax in Shvius, it's called doing something together with them, having them as part of the group to be Ma'av L'Shana is called Kesher Shaim. You're doing it together with people who are. It sounds like I should be careful. Listen, this Rish Lakish, he's calling him Kesher Rishayim, which is just fascinating. The whole thing. So he's saying you shouldn't be allowed to associate. You can't include them in a bezdin to be an Avodah Shana because they were too lax about not criticizing Tzeichei Shvius.
Why have the whole concept of Dalekaf schools?
I guess when it comes to people being over b'fahasia, it's gonna spread. So you can't be down the kafschos. You have to come out against it. The Chassam Sofer, when he was fighting against reform, he wasn't down the kafschos. He went after them hammer and nails.
But they were pretty explicit in their intent. There was no room for it being down the kafschos. I mean, here they say, okay, essentially they're being down the kafschos. They don't know exactly what the case is.
In any case, Rabbi Yochanan was not so happy with this. Rabbi Yochanan do'aka. He said, calm down. Don't watch what you're saying. You're not right. He also kamed Rabbi Yochanan. When these two Amoraim came to Rabbi Yochanan, they knew what Rish Lakish was fulminating about them. How did you stand by when he called us Roy Bakar? He said, not like it was all. He said, you could have them there because it's not worse than shepherds who watch cowboys. It's not any worse than that. And we're Amoraim. How did you Rabbi Yochanan stand by when Rish Lakish called us that? Said to them, listen, at least he called you Roy Bakar. Like we said before, Roy Tzayin are worse because Roy Tzayin allow their sheep to graze on other people's property. At least he called you Roy Bakar. And the idea is that, as we often see this very often in the Gemara, that Amoraim use strong terms when they're arguing in halacha. So the fact that they called you something is not a reason to get upset. He was advocating for his position. So don't worry about it. My Kesher Rishayim. What was this concept that he said, that Rish Lakish said that these you're not allowed to make a din Torah together. You can't make a bezdin with these two people because the Kesher Rishayim. You're associating with Rishayim. Shivna. So we give a whole story about Shivna. Shivna was an advisor to Chizkiah Melech. Chizkiah Melech was a tzaddik, and Shivna was stuck with him when they were being besieged. And Shivna was a very popular figure in his own right. Shivna Havadarsh Betleser Avasa, Chizkiah Havadarsh Bechad Sar Avasa. Shivna darshaned in front of 13,000 there was 130,000 people, and Chizkiah would darshan in front of 11,000. I'm sorry, 110,000 people. Each Ravasa is 10,000. He also Sanhedrin v'tzar led Yushalayim. When Sanhedrin came to besiege Yushalayim, Kosev Shivna Piska, he wrote a letter. Shivna wrote a letter. Shada Begira, and he sent it on an arrow, and he shot the arrow to Sanhedrin, and it said on the letter, Shivna v'siyate shlima, Chizkiah v'siyate lo yishlima. It's not much like in Eretz Yisrael right now. He said, we're ready to make peace. It's just Chizkiah is the one who doesn't want to make peace. Like this mamish exactly. When people say, it's a peace, let's make a peace. Maisa, when you undermine the Melech, it's crucial. It's traitorous. So this Shimna was a traitor. He went to Sanchev. He said, we're ready to make peace. He showed him that we're not unified. Once you're not unified, you lose your leverage. Shneimar, Kihine Harishayim, these are Rishayim, Yadrichun Keshes, they send a bow, Kivnu Chitzam Al Yeser, and they catch it. Kivnu Chitzam Al Yeser. They send their arrows. I forgot what Al Yeser is. Yasem Al Shem Shai. So Hachetzum Mavakish Lahamis Es Adoinu V'Lashon Hara. Oh no, that's the wrong one. Yeah. So this is what the pasuk means, that he sent his arrow to undermine Chizkiah. Havakam mistafi Chizkiah. Chizkiah was worried, was concerned. Maybe since Chizkiah had a larger group coming to his shiurim, maybe Taka he's right. Maybe I should give in. Maybe this Shivna is right. Maybe Taka, that's what people want. So Navi came to him and said, don't say I'm going to associate whoever the Rabbim says you should associate with. Climber. You don't have to feel that because they're a roiv and they are advocating for a certain position that you have to give it. They're a kasher rishayim. This idea that we should give in and allow the Bnei Yisrael basically to become avodim to Sancheriv is the council of rishus, and therefore they're not even counted. It's not, you don't have to worry about that. They're a roiv. They're excluded from the cheshbon. So then we continue with the story of the Shivna. Shivna knew there was a decent chance this wasn't going to end well for him. So he wanted to say, I'm going to be the king instead of Chizkiah. So he went to get himself a kever in the royal Beis HaKvaris. And Navi came and said to him, what are you doing here? That you're digging for yourself a grave here. Hini Hashem metaltalecha metaltala geber. The Rebbeinu Shalom is going to make you do the wanderings of a man. And Amarab tlu legaber kashim edisasa. I want to say the wanderings of a man because it's worse than a woman. A woman will have more people will be more sympathetic. They'll let her into a house. A man who's wandering around, he's not going to no one's going to pick him up as a hitcher. They're scared he's going to do. They'll let them in the house. So it's worse to be a wandering man. You're going to be wrapped. What does that mean? Someone who has saras is called it someone who's wrapped. When you see that from Shivna, on their lips they're going to wrap around. Son of Yitznach, pasuk continues. Right, this is the end of that pasuk of Hina Hashem metalcha metals gever va'odcha ete, and it continues. Tznoif yitznefecha sinfa kader ala aretz, in a wrap like the wrapping of the earth. Rechavas yadayim, to the open spaces. You're going to be surrounded, which Rashi explains means you're going to be surrounded by armies like the way something is wrapped around a ball to kick you out of Eretz Yisrael, to kick you into a place where it's wide open. Tana hu bikish kloin beis adonai levikach nepach kvoide lekoin. Because that's the end of that pasuk. The end of the pasuk is Sneif yitznefecha b'tzneif kader al eretz rechavetz yadayim shama Thomas. That's where you're going to die. V'shama markaves kvedecha kolam beis adonecha. That's where you're going to get to the embarrassment, the busha of your house. So since he wanted to embarrass, he wanted to overturn Chizkiah. Therefore, whatever covet he had was turned into busha. So what happened? So in the meantime, all that happened so far. He shot the arrow, and he tried to dig a grave for himself, and he got rebuked. And now he can't try to act on it. When he left the gates of the city to go, Jimmy Carter was always going to negotiate peace treaties after he was president. This guy said, I'm going to go negotiate with Sanhedrin. He had a whole contingent that was going with him. As soon as he went out of the city, Gavriel closed the door behind him and nobody joined with him. He said, so the Sanhedrin said to him, well, you said you're coming, you represent this big contingent who wants to give in. Where is everybody? Amar Hadrubi. He said they turned around, they didn't join me. He said, oh, so you're still a lunatic who's advocating on his own. You have no support, so you're making a joke. So he said you're making a joke. They made holes in his heels. And they tied them to the tails of his horses. And they dragged him, and they killed him by dragging him along. That was his ignominious death. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Shivna Bal Hanohaya. Shivna, this that he did this, was he was a Bal Hano. What does Rashi say? Bal Hano? Either he was a hedonist, he enjoyed the pleasure of this world, and that's why he was running after power, or he was a Mishkav Zachanik. It says over here, Legabi Shivna, that he go to the treasures. It says Legabi David that he got this Alicia, what's the name? Something Hashunamis, something Ben Hashunamis, that she took care of him in his old age. So that refers to David's pleasure or hashkava. So Pasuk continues. Ki hashosais yeharsun tzaddik ma poal. Because the hashosas, we're going to define what hashosas means, is destroyed. Tzaddik ma poal. What does the tzaddik accomplish? V'huda Rav Ina Chad Amar ilu Chizkiya v'seyata nerosim tzaddik ma poal. What the pasuk is saying, if Chizkiya and those who are on his side, the tzaddikim, are destroyed, what is the accomplishment of the tzaddik? How could that be? The Chad Amar ilu Beis Hamikdash yaris. If the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, Hashos is referring to the Beis Hamikdash. Tzaddik mapal. Ula Amar ilu mashavoisav shel oisa rasha eina nerasas. If the plans of Shivna, who is opposing Chizkiya, are not destroyed, if its plans are not destroyed, tzaddik mapal. How could such a thing be? What is the accomplishments of the tzaddik? So Bishlam Amar ilu mashavoisav shel oisa rasha hanuch tevskia hashosas yeharson. Hashosas could mean machshavas. It means a person's plans and thoughts. So what it's saying is, if his plans are not destroyed, what's going to be with the tzidkas? According to Mandama, that means that if the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, Nami the Tanan Evan Ha'Yisrael Shami Beis Nevi Moshe Shia grass. It's talking about the Evan Shasiya. Hashosas is referring to the Evan Shasiya, which is the foundation of the Beis Hamikdash. Elamanda B'Chizkiya V'Siyatoi. How does Hashosas refer to Chizkiya? Hecha Ashkan Sadiki the Ikri Shosas. Where did that come from? D'chsiv. Kil Hashem etzukei eretz. Hashem is the foundations of the earth, the pillars of the earth. V'yashas aleim tevel, and it's resting on them everything. So that's a reference to tzaddikim. Biba is saying mehacha hefliya eitza. Someone who gives who has great eitzas higdil taishia, and he increases taishia, meaning that he increases again something to do with wisdom. So taishia could be a reference to wisdom. So hashasa also could be a reference to Talmidei Chacham. Amar of Chanan, Lama Nikra Shma Taishia. Why is the Torah called Taishia? He mateshes koicha shel adam. As we know, Torah mateshes koicha shel adam. So that's why it's called Taishia. Davar acha Taishia shenitna b'chashoy bnei hasotin. The Torah was given in the quiet to avoid the satan. So chashoy Taishia is quiet. Davar acha Taishia dvarim shel toyu sha'olam b'shoy saleh. It's a contraction. Taishia is toy. The first part of toy is toyu, which is ephemeral, something that's not solid, which is meaning just words. The Torah is just words. But shaholim b'shoy the toyu shoisis is the second part of the word, is that people are amazed from it. So Torah is something that it doesn't have substance, but even so, it has great substance that the whole world depends on it. So what does this phrase mean? It's a very not what it sounds like. Zakta Rashi machshava, right opposite here in the Rashi. Machshava dagas halev al mazoynos of shaladam. The stress that people have of trying to provide. The stress of parnasa. Me'eles, Rashi says, mahanya lishkach talmudei, causes a person to forget what he learns. It's hard to learn if you're worrying about your parnasa. Shenemar mefer machshavos arumim lo sasisenu yadeim toishia. It mefer, this stress undoes the plans of those who are smart, and there's not going to be a toishia. There's not going to be Talmud Torah, like we just said. That we just touched toishia to mean Torah. Amar Rabba masukim lishma. Rabba says, however, if they're Isaac and Torah lishma, anyway else, in that case, it's not the stress of parnasa is not going to disturb him. Shneimer, Rabbi's machshavos belevis v'atzas Hashem hisakum. Person could have a lot of machshavos and he's worrying about things. But Atzas Hashem, if he's doing it, if he learns Torah lishma, that's going to remain. Eitz sheyesh b'dvar Hashem hitakum lo'olam. When someone learns and he has a mind for Hashem, that's going to remain forever. Okay, the Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda said that this din, that someone who engages in gambling is also to be a dayan or an aid. Rabbi Yehuda said it's only if he's a professional gambler, but not if he just does it for fun. Amar Vo Amar Balaza Halach Rabbi Yehuda Halach Rabbi Yehuda Amar Vo Amar Balaza Kulon Tzichan Hachraza BeBezdin. Anyone who is mentioned in the Mishnah that he's also because he's a Mesachik Bekuvia, or he's one of these types Seikrei Shvius, the different things of Raya. It's only if it was announced in Bezdin that he is postulated. Well, we didn't say Raya in the Mishnah. Then afterwards we added on Raya. We added on Raya as an additional, also similar that he's not careful about Geneva. So Raya pliba Ravacha Ravina. But Lagabi Raya, it wasn't mentioned in the Mishnah. That's a machlok. It's Chadam Abai Achrazim, Chadam Aloi Bay Achrazim. One says you need Achraza because, again, the problem is if you don't make an announcement, people use them as Eidim, not realizing that it's going to cause problems with Lekuchas later, right? If you sell something and use one of these Eidim, and then later on it turns out that one of them was a Raya, nobody knew about it. One of them was a Mesachah Bekuvia. At the time you took him on, you didn't know it. So your contract is going to be invalidated retroactively when you find out. But we say one says so you need a hachraza for Raya. The other one says you don't need a hachraza because everyone knows that what a person does for a living. If a guy's a Raya, he's a Raya. According to the Mandama that you don't need hachraza, that's what Rabbi Yehuda Amarav says. Stam Raya, we brought the Gemara earlier. So Yehuda Amarav says that Stam Raya is possible because, like we said, because everyone knows that who's a Raya, so every Raya is possible. Mandama Baya hachraza my stam raya puzzle. If you need achraza, how can you stam raya is puzzle until you have achraza? You can't assume he's puzzle. My stam raya puzzle. So no. When it says the stam raya is puzzle, it means the bistama machrazina. Like we explained earlier in the Gemara, what it means is that you can assume someone who is a raya, even if you don't know that he did anything wrong yet, you can assume that he's okay with his animals grazing in other people's fields, and you can immediately be makros. You don't have to know what he did. The Gemara, this is the Gemara before. The Taisus asked if that's the case. Once we know, if we're saying that not by the case of raya, it's not mistam machrozin and Allah. They have to know what he did. Then what does it make a difference? Anyone who steals, you're always going to say they're usher. So why we? You want to ask what is the Taisus asks, how does that work? There was a matana that was given to someone, and in the shtar matana there were two gazlanim who signed in it. Some of Rapapa Bar Shmuel Achshure, Tol Achurzina alive. Rapapa Bar Shmuel wanted to be mater. He wanted to say that this matana is a good matana, even though there's gazlanim signed on it. There's still good edim because there was no achraza. And we said it, everything that was stated in the Mishnah needs achraza. Amalei Rav and he to be no achraza, but gazim derabanan. The Mishnah were all gazlanim derabanan. They weren't actual gazlanim. The gazlan deraisa, you need achraza. Someone who's a gazlan deraisa, you don't need achraza. That's they're by law. The Torah says al tos yadcha imrash aliyas eid chametz that they're not allowed to be an aid. So it's not the takanas chachamim. On a takanas chachamim, we could say we have a problem if you don't make achraz that people won't be aware. But over here, they're not good eid midaraisa. So even though there's a problem, there might be a problem of say the lekuchas, but even so, they're still not good eid. Okay, this is all easy. So we'll continue until they start. Siman debar v'arayis ganav Rav Nachman oichlei davar akar psul leid. So this is not what one would think. One would think there's someone who eats pig, but it's not what Rashi says. Oichlei davar akar, about 6 lines up in the narrow lines. Mekablet stakam in hanachim. Someone who takes welfare from Goyim. The Havichil Hashem machmas mammon. He's someone who's machal Hashem in order to get money. V'havali karasha the chamas. It's like a ganef. It's amazing, right? We're saying we're going to see that anyone who's chashed on mammon is possible. We're saying someone who takes welfare from Goyim.
It's a hot take.
Yeah, that's
no. You think
it's a very controversial. The way I'm saying it?
I would say so, yeah.
Saying staka?
You said welfare. I would have said a guy walks around his hand, the guy who picks up money. Welfare. No one loses.
Well,
the government.
With the time, it's not just from the Goyim, they also pay taxes.
Yeah.
It says more about us.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't know, speak for yourself. A lot of taxes.
Okay, fine. We can include this. You can include you in our.
Anyway, okay, fine. You're right. I don't know exactly what the parameters of taking stuff from Goyim. You know what his name? Like the rabbi, this Eckstein, who goes around collecting money for Israel. That's like it's not paid for individuals. It's like a big Christian group. It's like a big, hundreds of millions of dollars from conservative Christians. It's hundreds of millions for Israel by going to their pastors. Mom is going to the priests and getting them to raise money. And in any case, yeah, you're right. So the apostolates. This is only if you do it publicly, but doing it, you just fill out a TurboTax. I guess it's okay. And also, but for Hesi is only allowed. Is also only a problem. If he if he has an ability to get let's say to ask for tzedakah quietly, and he does it publicly, but if he has no other choice, after he has to survive, he can take. Rav Nachman, someone who's kosher on arayis is kosher to say edus. As we're going to see from Rav is going to say that the only things that pass you for edus are things that when they get to money, which could mean a person is susceptible to being corrupted, to getting a bribe. But someone who's kosher on arayis, that's a l'teyavin. Rav Sheshas ani Ani Mari, answer me, my Rebbe. Abon B'Kasev kosher. How could you say he's kosher? He's getting 40 lashes. He's getting malchus from the Chachamim, and even so, he's kosher. He's an Avarian. He's a Russia. How can you trust him? Okay. Amaravu Moida Reb Nachman in Edis Isha Shu Pasal. Reb Nachman is Moida Legabe Edis Isha, even though he's kosher al Arayis, that he's Reb Nachman says he should be kosher Legabe Mominus, but to say Edis Legabe Ishus, he's going to be Pasal. Amravina Vitem Reb Papaleh La Fuka. That which we say he's Pasal is only if he's trying to say Edis to take a woman who's to say Edis about a get, to say that she's mutter. Avalayula, less lamba. But if he's coming to get a woman married, that means she's going to be also to him. It's going to be more difficult for her to fall into his hands. Then there's not a problem for him to say, hey, this one that he's going to lie about that. So now this one is mind-blowing. Obviously, if he's getting someone married, it's not helping him. That if he's chasha al rayis, it's just making things harder on himself. Mal the tema ha difale, the cause ksiv mayim geduvim mimtaku. He's such an avarian that he wants it to be married because it's going to be more geschmack for him because of mayim geduvim. He'd rather be oiber on a rice with a isha who's married than a isha who's psul, pnuya. Kamashma the kaima haki shchicha. Like, as long as she's free, she's going to be more available. Well, I think that's fascinating. Amar Rav Nachman, Ganav Nisam, Ganav Tishrei Lo Yishmei Ganav. A Ganav at the times of harvest is not called a Ganav. When and Hani Barisa, that's talking about sharecropper, but more than a small amount of something that's finished. This is a sharecropper thinks that something like he's allowed to eat. There's this Lisat Shabadisha, he's allowed to eat finished food as he's working. So even after he's finished, he takes a little bit extra. Either the Rishonim say different things. Either he's the takam maskim, they're Michael on it, or he's Moira Hatter for himself. But he's not intending really to be a Ganav. Ichrei de Rav Zvid, a worker of Rav Zvid, Ganav Kava de Shari Upasle. One took a little bit of barley and he passed him later. Ganav Kibura Dahini, he took some bundles of dates and he passed him Vedas. But in fact, the Gemara said that the Gemara is asking, those were not arisim, those were regular workers. So that's why he passed them. Hanu kabure de cover nafshe b'yom tov harishon shel atzaros. These grave diggers that buried someone on the first day of Shavuos, shamtinu Rav Papa paslanu edus. So Papa put them in chayrim and he passed them edus because they were getting paid to do this. V'achsherinu Rav Huna bar Yeshua. Rav Huna bar Yeshua said, no, they're kosher. Amalei Rav Papa v'Rishayim ninu. They were showing that they take money in order to do something you're not allowed to do, so you're kosher on edus. So no, they think that since burying someone is a mitzvah, so they think the mitzvah is more important than the issur of burying someone on Yom Tov. So they thought that they weren't allowed. In fact, we already put them in cherem, so how could they do it again? They know that they're not allowed to do it. This is another fascinating thing. They think that which the Rabbanan put them in cherem is they were supposed to do it, and the Rabbanan put them in cherem, that's a kapara. So they're getting, in the end, they did, the Rabbanan want them to do it, but in order to get the kapara for what they did, the Issapot, they have to be put into cherem. But they ultimately thought it was okay. That's why they don't have puzzles. Yeah, listen. Yeah.